Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Welcome to the show. Today is episode 191 and we have JK Shaulis. She is the Excitable Introvert and we're going to be talking about from introvert to influential. I'm your host, Karen Roberts, helping coaches and therapists to get their message heard to the people who need to hear it. Now, she is known for her energy, enthusiasm and flair, global speaker, international bestselling author. JK Shaulis wows audiences in nearly 20 countries with her message to embrace your awesome by communicating with wholeness, boldness at work, home and beyond. Fortune 500 companies and noted organizations love JK's fresh, unique perspective gained from her background as an award-winning performer, newspaper columnist, broadcast journalist and college instructor, all by voting age. She is the founder and CEO of Awesome Enterprises LLC. JK, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. This is going to be fun. I love your energy.
We're just going to have some fun. This is the point of it. This is a coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity. Right. So, first of all, there's a lot to go through. So could you share with the listeners, before we discuss the topic of today, a little bit more, explain your backstory, how you came to be doing what you're currently doing?
In a very short version, I knew very early on who I was and what I wanted to do. So I was the off-center child who had these very big dreams. So I wanted to be on international stages. I would practice my elocution to BBC World. Here in the States, I would get in trouble for staying up late and practicing BBC World News. This was like the off-center kid that I was. And so I knew early on that I would be doing big things, but I also knew that I was very quiet and reserved and needed that time away. And so in high school, I got what I call a blank check. I was recruited to a new high school to be like their star debate person. And it was completely new environment. No one knew me as the quiet girl. No one knew me for anything because I was brand new. So I decided to be that person that I envisioned. So rather than listening to, you can either be the person who's on stages writing these books, or you can be the person who's quiet reading a book. I decided to say, okay, if I am the person who's both, what does that look like? And so living into that and saying yes to these different opportunities way back in high school, it created and really laid the foundation for everything that I'm doing now. So that meant publishing my work and letting people see it, which got me published internationally as well as across the US when I was still 15, 16 years old. It meant being on these international stages where I'm competing, I'm doing like speaking competitions with global people, I'm winning money for college. It created the foundation for all of this. And so the work that I do now around teaching women to embrace their awesome, all of that started with me experimenting and just saying, okay, if I were to try this, what would that look like? If I were just to be that person, okay, if I'm going to be on the stages speaking, I guess I need to get comfortable with speaking in front of people. If I'm going to be this best-selling author, I guess I need people to see what I write. And that type of approach with, okay, you have these dreams, you have these visions. Let's play around with what it looks like to be that person as opposed to letting your introversion be the crutch. Let's just see how it goes. And if it goes well, great. If it doesn't, we can tweak it. And that's literally everything in my life started from that point, started from that decision.
Wow. Now, okay, so how did that happen? So for a lot of introverts out there, and look, I have one daughter who's an introvert, one daughter who's an extrovert. What made the difference for you to take that on at such a young age? And was that deliberate, or was it that's just the way you did things and then later on you figured out what was going on?
It was both. It started out really just me experimenting for my own sake because I was 6 and 7 and I knew that I would be speaking and I would be writing books. My kindergarten aspiration was to be a New York Times bestselling author. So I knew like in kindergarten, these were the things that I wanted to do. And so that experimentation was really just me recognizing what I knew to be true. I don't know I don't know why that as opposed to, I don't know, being a veterinarian or a plumber. Like, I don't know why those aspirations as opposed to something else, but I recognized early on, this is absolutely true. It's as true as anything else in existence, despite what's around me. So if that is true, let's see how it goes. That was for me. And then once I was getting those wins, and even later on in my adulthood, having to come back to those lessons because life happens and you start letting people get into your head. Oh, maybe I do need to be like normal. Maybe I do need to just do like regular things that everyone else is. Maybe that's better. And then having to come back to those same lessons. Okay, look, this isn't me. Who am I? And if I am really that person, what does that look like? And it's really just experimenting with that. And then before I started the company in full, I would just have conversations with colleagues or with friends. It's okay, if you're saying this is what you want and you know that's true, here, let's figure out the steps you're going to take to get towards that. What's the one thing you could try out? Let's try it out and see how it goes. And they were beginning to make these huge leaps in their careers, in their relationships, in their community. And all of that led to, I guess I should get paid for this, as opposed to like just helping people out. It was all of it started with just me experimenting for my own sake. And then me like, okay, this worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. Oh, it's worked for me and all of you all. I guess I should get paid for this and do this on a larger scale. And here I am today doing a lot of those, almost everything that I do and I teach and I guide women with, and even for companies when I'm working with these executives, it's the same things that 14, 15-year-old me did. It's
Right.
the exact same thing. And it is deceivingly simple, but it is not easy. It requires
Mm.
and it requires work and it requires more than anything for you to trust that who you are is true, who you actually are, not the story that you've been told about yourself and not the story that you bought into, but actually who you are is quite powerful. Even if you are quiet, even if you are reserved, even if you are an internal processor, that's the value that you bring. That quietness, that introversion is the power that you bring.
And the way I'm a little bit concerned about all these labels, right? So I actually only learnt, I knew my daughter, my youngest, was quieter than my elder one, but I didn't really understand when we talk about introvert, extroverts and the differences in the way they process things. And I was, I suppose, before lockdown, it was during lockdown that I learnt this, but before lockdown even, I was a bit more concerned about her because she wasn't going out, because that's what I did when I was a kid, but of course I'm an extrovert. And so I was concerned that she wasn't happy, and it actually made me understand her a lot better and relax a little bit, like actually she's okay. She
Yes.
needs that time. She would have her head in a book all the time. Obviously, a lockdown,
Yeah.
even for an introvert, was like too much. But I learned that normally introverts would go for certain jobs and extroverts would go to other jobs. But she chose, just coming out of school, I know it's different over there, and you'll probably be shocked by this, because at age 18, she started working in a pub, as we call them over here, not a bar.
Yeah.
But she chose it, and I would never have expected her, because she wasn't very talkative with people, but it gave her the opportunity to have that protection of the barn. She could be busy, but it was also pushing her out. And my concern with these labels is that many people might not be pushing themselves out to do something because they think, oh, I'm an introvert, so I should be doing things in this way. We all need to step out of our comfort zone. And so do you agree with these sort of, I'm not saying they're rules, but people will try to help and say, oh, to an introvert, this would be more suited to the way you are. Is it helping, or is it actually going to help keep people stuck?
It's a little bit of both. There are a few things to unpack. First of all, a lot of people get the term introvert and they think of someone who is quiet or shy or they're antisocial. And that has nothing to do with introversion. You can be a shy extrovert. You can be a socially anxious extrovert. So introversion is just the term used for people who are internally processing stimulation. So as opposed to extroverts, they need to externally process stimulation, meaning that for extroverts, they get their energy and really their focus. They get jazzed about having conversations, engaging with their world, flitting from one thing to another. They need to talk out and walk out their thoughts. And then by the end of that stream of consciousness, there's what they actually mean. For introverts, very different. We need to internally process. So we need time away from stimulation. And it's not because we need to be away, it's that we are taking on so much. We are picking up on everything. So we're hearing what's being said. We're recognizing what's not being said. We're looking at how people are reacting, the people around are responding, what's the environment like. And then we're processing, do we need to respond to this? How will people think? If we like all of this is happening with a simple, like you ask someone, how's their day? And all of what I just said in the introvert's mind is happening. And so that is the reason we need time away from stimulation, is our brains need to then sort through all of this that we took in to reach a conclusion. And then we share that. So whether that's a thought, an opinion, an idea, just a response, we need time to go through that mentally. And so that's really the difference. It's just how we process stimulation. And so recognizing that's the only thing that's different. Like I need an extra beat to process all of the stimulation I just took in, as opposed to talking it out, walking it out to process it. There are the things that really begin to your point, become a bit of more of a harm than it is of a benefit, is when you are taking this idea, if you need to be away and think a beat, then you can't be in a leadership position, or you can't be in a forward facing position, something that's social, that's not going to be suited to you, whether it's the introvert who's saying that to themselves or others who are saying that to them. That is completely wrong. Some of the most powerful and potent people are introverts. So can you imagine someone telling Beyonce, you know what, you're too quiet. You need to, why don't you take an accounting job? I think that'll be better suited for you. She's an introvert and she has spoken about this countless times. Adele, another introvert. Steve Jobs, Simon Sinek, Barack Obama. I can name like dozens of people. Wait, what? Rihanna's an introvert? Like, how is that possible? That doesn't make sense. Yes, they are internal processors, but they are also very powerful. They're in positions where they have to be in front of the public, and they do so well because they recognize, once I finish with doing all of this forward facing things, I now need to take that time away from all of you. Lose my number, forget I exist. I need 1 to 15 days to recover. And they are very intentional about making that time. And even before doing engagements, they are very intentional about how they engage. And so that notion that if you are an extrovert, you're naturally better suited to leadership. No, just because you talk a lot and you talk loudly doesn't mean that you're suited for the position. In the same way that just because you're reserved and you need time to process doesn't mean that you can't be suited for it. So it's interesting, that dynamic, because once you recognize that it's just a matter of how someone processes, okay, of course, it makes sense for an introvert would do fine if they're a speaker or if they're a musician or a politician. They just need extra time. Okay, that makes sense. But if you're thinking, oh, they don't like people, so we can't have them, we can't have them leading the company. You don't like people.
Oh, it's crazy. Honestly, I cannot explain how she has blossomed. It was like, that was never the job. This is why we have to allow our children to do whatever it is they want. She chose it, because I would have thought, really? But the change in her has just been amazing. And because she internally processes, she's really good. She's really good. She's fast. She takes more money than anybody else. She is organized. So she is excelling in an area that if I'd listened to these people who say, oh, this would be more suited for her, she would have been working in go and work in an office on your own, not in the open plan. That's what I was hearing. And it's, man, that could have gone so wrong if even she had listened. But because this is a danger, isn't it? None of us need to stay in our comfort zone. So it doesn't matter whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you've still got to step out of your comfort zone and push for the things that maybe you're not naturally quite so good at. Although for me, being organized, I have somebody outsource.
I wanted to chime in on why, and I think your daughter is a perfect example of this, of ways that introverts, when they lean into that introversion, that's where their success comes, not just from a career perspective, but just for yourself as a human, that there is this. So the reason why, from what you were saying, that she wanted to be in a space where she could test the limits of her introversion, but she recognized that I do need to be able to step away. I do need time where I'm quiet. I don't mind engaging with people. I just don't want to engage with all of the people. So this pod position is one where, okay, when I want to talk to a customer, I can chit chat with them. I can ask them things. I can serve them up. And then I can walk away and I don't have to be bothered with them until they order again. And then if I am overwhelmed because too many people need my attention, I can dust the bottles. I can go down something. Like I can do something to step away. And then when I'm ready, I can come back and I can have that one-to-one engagement. That is exactly what is beautiful about introverts when they are leaning into their introversion. And then for the patrons, because her natural ability as an introvert, because we're so observant and we see everything, we're able to engage and connect in a very deep way. So the patrons are just coming to get a drink. I just want a fifth of whatever. But the way that she then engages them, even if she's not having a long conversation, they feel seen, they feel heard because she is recognizing everything. She creates an experience for them, even if she's just serving a drink. She's just getting pretzels. Yeah. She's just doing something that's very simple, but it creates this experience where the person's, oh, I feel special with doing this very simple task. I like you. Here's some extra money. And that's one of the gifts that we have. We are deeply connected and we're able to create those connections. But if we are trying to play the extrovert game and we're trying to oh, let's be the loudest and the brightest and let's be the one that's most forward, then we're missing out on those ways that we naturally connect in our own way, the ways that we are able to observe what's happening and pick up on vibes and see what the deal is and then translate that into how we engage. If we're trying to play the extrovert game, we miss out on all those skills, not just for us, but the people that we are interacting with. They are missing out on our skills, our abilities, our proficiencies. But I love that you shared this example because most people would not, first and foremost, they would think this is a completely wrong job for you. But also just being able to break down why that actually, her success is, it makes perfect sense. It's counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense.
Perfect. I'm so pleased. She's only 19. She's got her own cocktail bar. They've named it Danny's Cocktail Bar. I'm so proud of her.
Look at that.
So proud of her. She'll be running it by the time she's 20. I know that. But it is, and this is my concern, going back to, I get it that there's a lot of talk about this stuff out there. But I also see that, be careful, don't put people in boxes, because I suppose what I'm getting from what you've just said there is the most important thing, you've got to understand yourself.
Absolutely.
Understand your strengths, understand what you need, and then, go get it. You can do absolutely anything you want, but we might all do things in a slightly different way.
Exactly. And that's where everything starts, because especially with the introverts that I work with, a lot of the challenge, there's definitely the challenge when it comes to introvert bias. There's research all around that, where introverts are often discounted because of their introverted nature. And if you're a woman or you're a person of color, God forbid you are a woman of color, all of that gets amplified in the ways that you're missing out on promotions and raises and engagement, so on and so forth. Tons of research around that. But the challenge then becomes the ways that we internalize those things and we deselect from opportunities. So many of the introverts I work with, that's part of the work that we're doing is telling yourself all of these stories about how you need to change and you just need to get out of your shell and so on and so forth, because you've heard that your entire life, the way that your brain works has been wronged. And so it takes effort for you to undo those stories, to unlearn those lessons, and then to find just, you don't need a lot of faith. You just need 1% more than not. You just need 1% more than not to say, you know what? I have no idea how this will end. This may end like horrendously, but I'm already feeling like crap. So let's try it out and see how it works. You just need that little tiny bit that you give that grace to yourself to challenge these ideas and challenge the ways that people perceive and people interpret your introversion. And when you're willing to do that, to at least make that step, and it is uncomfortable to do that. It's anytime you're doing something that is counter to what everyone around you is saying, what an entire society is saying about you, that's difficult. And we don't like confrontation because we've got to process like all of your feelings, my feelings, the whole world's feelings about we've got to do all of that on top of our usual processing. But when they're willing to do, that's when this grand transformation can take place, because then you're able to see, oh, hold on. There were things that I could have been doing all along that I just assumed no one was going to want me in that position because I am reserved, or I just assumed that they were going to turn me down because I'm not the loudest, or I know I would be great at this, but I don't want to get bogged down with having to engage all the time. So I'm just not going to even allow myself to do the work to put myself in front. To even, I won't even give someone a chance to decline me. I will decline myself. And that is the challenge. That is where it becomes dangerous. For, again, going back to those labels, when someone is taking the label of introvert and they are deselecting from opportunities, or people are using that label of extrovert to then put people into positions that they have no business, they have no way of fulfilling the needs. They just happen to be the one that's the loudest and the brightest. Doesn't mean that they're the most qualified or effective. And that's where that danger comes, when we are making, based largely on that, how loud of you are you, how bright are you? That's where it gets really tricky. And again, it's not just a matter of you losing out on opportunities for yourself. There are people that you are meant to impact and influence, and those people are missing out on your wisdom, on your insight, on your expertise, on the ways that you can see how all of the dots are connected. You can see the blind spots, you can see the gaps, you can see all of this. That's part of how our brains work. And so when we are deselecting from those opportunities, we are denying people our insight, our genius. They need it. They want it, but they don't even know that it's there because you took yourself out of the game.
I love that. It is. There just definitely needs to be more awareness, and people need to have a real understanding that everybody is absolutely fine as they are. Nobody's broken. Nobody's better or worse than the other. We're just all magnificently imperfect. And
Right.
but we all have our own strengths, and you've got to go with what is right for you rather than, so I suppose, like you said, just stop listening to all that background noise and people that have been telling you what you should do or how you should do it for however many years, and trust
Right.
yourself a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of those, this is just like a slight, on behalf of all of the introverts, like a PSA on behalf of all the introverts. I know that for extroverts especially, it can look like when we are in those quiet spaces, it can seem like there's something wrong with us. We have a genuine, like we're unhappy or we're disconnected or we're confused. We are perfectly happy. We are in bliss. There is nothing wrong with us. I recognize why it would look that way. It would seem to an extrovert, if an introvert is like sitting at their desk, they have on their headphones and they're just typing on the computer. It seems to the extrovert that this person is like completely detached from reality and they're just trying to escape life. And so you need to check on them. You need to make sure they're okay. they're fine. They actually were better before you came and bothered them.
Yeah.
Because now that you came to bother them, you've interrupted their train of thought. You've interrupted the flow of what they were doing. They've got to deal with you and navigate all of your stuff on top of being like having their focus broken. And once you walk away and we had to reassure you that we're fine, you don't really believe us, but you do, and you walk away, we still have to deal with the residue of that whole interaction before we can get back to the task at hand. So you created this whole bag of problems that we did not have before you started bothering us. And so I need to put that out there because I know many extroverts, they are well intending. They want to make sure because it looks like we are just miserable. It looks like there is something amiss and you have the best of intentions of checking on us. We are fine. If we're not fine, we will let you know. We have no problem with doing that. We might text you that we're not fine. We might write you a letter that we're not fine. We might send you an email about it and it'll be like 3 pages long. We might do it that way, but we will let you know when we're not okay. I just need to make sure that was stated because that happens so often. Oh God, so often. We were fine.
You just described me a couple of years ago. Honestly, I'm laughing my head off there because I'm like, oh, yeah, that was me. That was me. And it could be even as simple as I realised when I learnt this, and it was so helpful. This is why people do need to be aware. Because, yeah, I'm worrying about her. And I used to, if I asked her what she wants for dinner, of course she doesn't know. Of course she doesn't know. And so our joke became, well, yeah, but so who does?
Yeah.
But now I realise that, no, the way to do it is, right, darling, do you want to have a little think about what you want to have to eat later? When you've thought about it, come back and tell me. She just needs space. You can't put her on the spot.
Yes.
She needs space to process internally, like you said,
Yeah.
and then come back and give me an answer. Whereas, yeah, it's just simple things that we changed, and there was no resistance. Everything, actually, it changed our whole relationship, I would say, because, like you say, I was worried about. What do you mean you're not going out with your? Why? What's wrong?
But now you've created this whole anxiety.
Yeah.
Because like
I was the cause.
Happened here, and you just keep harassing me about going out. I am happy. Yep. I am fine. You're stressing me out by asking me this. You're making me wonder, what do you think about me? If you're constantly like it becomes like this whole thing. We spiral out very quickly and easily because we're processing everything. So I wanted to make sure that I said that, and I'm glad that you can affirm this type of
100%.
dynamic.
100%.
It happens so often, and a lot of time. And again, when this is happening, the extroverts don't realize that they're creating a problem. They are honestly and genuinely concerned, and they're acting out of love and the best interest, but they don't, because their perception of introversion is so different, and a lot of times they just don't understand it. It comes across for the introvert as an attack. Like, why are you still asking me this? I told you already. How many times are you going to ask me this? It becomes like this whole thing. And it's just because of our 2 ways of processing. And introversion, it's a spectrum. There's not you're either an extrovert or an introvert. We're all gradients of gray. And so for someone who is more of a social introvert, they can tolerate the questioning a little bit more because they are more socially inclined. But even then, I answered you. Stop asking me. I already answered you. Whereas a reserved introvert, they will ruminate about that even more than the rest of us introverts. They will be thinking about that for at least another 72 hours and just frustrated because they're thinking about it and how they should have responded and why are they having this again? I can't believe she's asking me this again. And why dare she? Yeah. Well, this happens all the time.
it's so fascinating, but it just means, so I can only go by my personal experience, life's so much easier when you have that understanding, because it's okay.
Yeah.
She's okay.
Yeah.
And okay, she just needs time. Don't ask her what you want to do tomorrow, because she needs time to. And
She's
so,
trying to think it
of course, then I'm not worrying, and then she's more happy.
Yeah.
It just totally improved things. It is funny what you said about, because I'm obviously, and I'm an extrovert, right? And I can be very oblivious to things. I miss things all the time. And again, this is just another example of Danielle, my daughter. We've got a very mixed family, right? There's 3 children. We're all adopted. So we're all mixed race. My brother's very dark skinned, although he's the same mix as me. My sister's in the middle, 2 white parents, only one now, unfortunately. All right, Dad. And then, so my youngest daughter is very light skinned. My elder daughter is a bit more like me, but she dresses like an anime character, and her boyfriend's Chinese. So,
Yeah.
and then my brother's daughter is very dark skinned. So when we go out as a unit, we get some funny looks, and they're not
Right.
necessarily being racist or anything. They're
Right.
probably just actually, right,
Like trying to figure out what's happening.
who's who and what.
Yes.
Whereas Danielle, even though she's the lightest skinned out of anybody, would really get offended because she's watching and, oh, they're looking at my brother. And it's whereas like me and my brother, we're totally oblivious to everything and we're fine. She would be taking on board anything that she's sensing that's going on. It's not even about her, bless her.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's part of the way that our brain works. We see and we pick up on all of this. All introverts are not intuitive or empathetic, but many of us are. And a lot of that comes because that's how we operate. We see the connections and we see all of these pieces. So a lot of things that someone who's more on the extroverted side would miss is they're engaging with the world. They're like talking and they're looking around and having a good old time. And we're here noticing like how everybody is interacting, how everyone, these people who are coming towards us, they're like yards and yards away. And we can see the looks on their faces and how that changed from when they were down there as they got closer to us and how they're engaging with each other. And we can, I won't say read their lips, but we can pick up on the vibe that they're putting down, whether it's more positive or confused, or we're picking up on all these people are just walking down the street. We're just walking down the street too, but we are noticing all of this and we're looking at how the people going are doing, how the rest of the family, she's noticing all of this. She's picking up on every single piece of it. And so it can seem like, okay, you're being a little too sensitive. Are you sure that's it can be like that. But she's been watching them and watching like all of this, not intentionally. She just wants to mind her own business, but her brain is picking up on all of this and she's sorting through all of what she's seeing and how she feels about it. And should she point it out or maybe not, or no, it's going to make a whole thing. And I don't want to do that, but they are doing this. Like I can tell you, all of this is happening in her head for these interactions. And so that's why it feels a lot more like personal. And it's something that hits a lot more because she's noticing all of it. She's picking up on all of it and having to sort through what to do with this information. Should anything be done with this information? If you do something, what should that be? And what would be the responses and reactions to said thing? It's a lot. And that is specifically why it's so draining for many of us when we're engaging, because our brains are picking up everything. The energy drain comes from us trying to sort through all of what's happening. For those who are more extrovert, you just say, what's going on? What's their problem? Maybe it's not that bad. Okay, it seems like it's something, but maybe it's not. And then you'll just keep talking about it, or maybe you'll act out something and then you're done with it. Once it's out, you're done. Like you forgot about it until she mentioned it like 3 months later. And it's like, oh wait, I do remember that. You still remember that? And she remembers it like it was yesterday with specific details because we pick up on all of that and we process all of that and we ruminate on all of that. It's the internal processing. It is exhausting. It is so much.
That's why she sleeps so much.
Yeah. But again, because of that ability that we have, there's a lot of challenges that come with it, clearly. But also because there is that level of observation and that level of sensitivity, when we are able to direct that into positive ways, now we can create those deeper connections. So you're recognizing when with a coworker or family member is feeling off. She looks fine, but there's something going on. Let me pull her to the side and give her a hug. Let me just send her a cute little meme. Let me just do something nice because I recognize that there's something happening here that everyone else isn't picking up on. Or, oh, I know that we said we were going to do this, but this might be better, and here's why. Like we can pick up on that because we've taken in all the data and we've processed all of it. So
Right.
it's important for us to know ourselves, but also it's not just about extroverts understanding introverts. It goes both ways. For us introverts, it can be extremely frustrating. Again, like when someone's asking how we're doing, or they're telling us to get out of our shell. It's well intended, of course, but it's so frustrating because we already are perfectly fine. Like it's not that we're perfect, but we're good where we are. Like when we need to get outside of our comfort zone, we will. So stop asking us. But we need to give some grace to the extroverts also, because part of them asking those questions and being engaged in that way is them processing their thoughts. Like they had this thought about it, and part of them making sense of it is to ask, is to persist. It's coming from a good place, annoying, but a good place. So give some grace. Recognize it's not to penalize you
Oh,
or to judge you, it's to make sure that you're okay. Or if someone is saying, like, if you have a boss or a manager who's saying you need to get out more often, yes, that is a judgment. That is. But recognize the reason why they're saying that is not because they are necessarily judging you. Perhaps Perhaps they are wanting to make sure that you are in position to get that raise, to get that promotion. And this is what's valuable for your organization. So you need to make sure of that. Or perhaps when someone is telling you to get out of your shell, they're not, your parent or your loved one isn't telling you that because they are thinking less of you. They don't want you to miss out on any opportunities because they recognize how talented you are, how smart you are, how engaging, all of these wonderful things, and they don't want you to miss out on opportunities, and they also don't want others to miss out on you. So there needs to be the two-way street when it comes to that recognition. It's not just introverts are perfect and extroverts are the bane of society, and the reverse isn't true either, where extroverts are perfect and introverts are the bane of society. We all have our strengths, exactly what you said. We all have our strengths, we all have our opportunities, and there is value with every gradient of
agree.
gray along that spectrum. We need
Oh,
everybody participating and bringing their best, the way that their best shows up. We need it all.
yeah, brilliant. Perfectly said. So for you, with your business, so how is it that you work? Is it just introverts you work with, or is it everybody? And so going from introvert to influential, how are you doing that?
It's been a mixed bag. My focus has only more recently in the past several years been almost exclusively on introverted women. Prior to that, my experience was in communication and personal development, a lot of the same work, just a much broader focus. So many of my clients were honestly middle-aged white men. And so this now position of more introverted women of color is quite different. First of all, just on the surface, that's a huge difference. But also that focus on how you use your introversion, that really came because I was frustrated with what I was seeing. My clients that I have were around public speaking and around executive presence. We were having conversations and I kept hearing the same thing, where there is this kind of dismissal of them because they are introverted and their sense that they needed to basically burn themselves to the ground in order to be more extroverted. And so I'm hearing a lot of this, and I wonder if there's some research around it. And there was like little to no research around the experiences specifically of introverted women of color. There was research around introversion around women. I think there were one or two studies around people of color in general. But what we found, and interviewing over 100 women, close to 200 people in total on the mixed bag around, on the spectrum of introversion and extroversion, male, female, non-binary, the whole mixed bag of people. What we found through our research and our interviews is that there is a very unique experience for introverted women of color, and more specifically for Black introverted women. And so these are things where they are often penalized because they are introverted, and the same qualities of introversion are weaponized against them. And so there were so many women who had the same stories that my clients were telling me too, that they were having these challenges where they were told that they would be promoted. And then when it came down to it, they're being told that they can't be promoted because they're too quiet. Or one that came up so many times is that they're being told by their manager, I don't know what you're thinking, so I don't know if I can promote you or give you a raise. You don't know what anyone is thinking. But why is this a reason to deny me of a promotion, of compensation, so on and so forth? So these sorts of things were coming up again and again across the country, across industries, across all of the things that might be, okay, I know this is happening, but it's just this type of position. It's just this type of area. It's just this tenure. No, across the board. And so that really is the impetus for me shifting my focus to specifically work with introverted women of color, because these experiences, it's not just a matter of they're missing out on opportunities. And like we were talking about where they're deselecting and things like that, there was some of that happening, but right alongside of it, you have women who, now that their boss is saying, you're making this coworker uncomfortable because you're not addressing them in the morning. So this is now a write-up in your review. You can't get those positions because you have this ding against you for something so simple. That means that your career is now stalled for at least another year until you can promote up. This means that the money that should have been going towards retirement, towards savings, towards investing is not there because, oh, you're an introvert. You shouldn't be an introvert. You can't take on these roles. Let's just put you to the side. That there are all of these other kind of domino effect things that starts with the introversion piece, with that introversion bias, and then leads to much bigger complications later on. So the work that I do now for since about 2019 is focusing on, one, having those conversations with women to equip them, don't deselect. Your introversion is the secret sauce. That is what you bring to the table. How do you sling it like it is the joy and the goal that it is? Like, how do you make that accessible so that you are whole and in enjoyment and service, and those that you are interacting with benefit? But the other piece of that is working with companies so that they are recognizing the ways that they are selecting leaders and the talent that they are leaving behind, whether you're a woman of color, whether you're a woman at all. When they are coming in with this introversion bias, it's now denying the company of benefits. It's denying the company of talent that is leaving, that is quiet quitting, that is taking all of this brain trust that they've had invested over the years into the private sector as entrepreneurs. This is productivity that is being lost. This is revenue that is not being generated. There are all of these adverse effects that the companies are now having to take the brunt of, because the people who make the choices of who is leaders or not, who is worthy of being a leader, starts with that whole introversion piece.
And do you think, so it's funny, if I can think back, I was brought up in a very white middle class town. So there was our family and one other family from Africa, and all the girls were very quiet. Now, here's the thing. Would they have naturally been introverted, or was it because of societal judgments has made them look inwards? Because that's also something that I've wondered. Like, is it something that you are? Is it something that because things have happened, it's made you look more inwards and observe more because of not a survival thing, but to avoid certain things? Because it's interesting to say more Black women are having these issues, especially with their introvert. But is the introversion caused because of the way society has been dealing with them?
It's a mixed bag. The research has been very mixed. There have been a number of studies trying to pinpoint where introversion is. It something that's genetic? Is it something that comes during childhood experiences, especially where there's trauma? Is it something that is then an adapted behavior later on in adulthood? Can you get over being an introvert? These sorts of things have been researched, which I have my own feelings about the approach that a lot of research takes, because a lot of it takes the vein of introversion needs to be fixed. Okay, what's the
No.
problem here? You're an introvert. That's a problem. How do we fix it? That's the lens that nearly all of the research that's been done to date takes that
Oh,
approach. So, me
really?
taking that part aside, what they found is that there's no conclusive evidence. Basically, there are some studies, and one of the major studies in the 1940s that kind of triggered this idea that introverts are more sensitive to stimulation than extroverts was one where they would give babies lemon. And depending on how the baby reacted, that would let them know. And they tracked them like over time, like how sensitive they were. And they found that people who then tested more on the introverted side, they would have the most adverse effect. They would react more harshly to the lemon rather than the babies who are more extroverted. They needed more lemon before they could really react to it. So this started the idea, okay, maybe this is a genetic component. Lots of problems with that, but okay, fine. What we then see, then getting into other research that looks at trauma as a potential effect. So whether it's racism, sexism, child abuse, any number of traumas, does this make someone either more likely to be introverted, or does that make them convert, if you will, into a more inward facing experience? The brain studies show that there is a difference, but whether it's the egg or the chicken, that's not
Yeah.
clear. So these things can happen together. And certainly extroverts have trauma and have things that happen as well. But there are some differences in the brain. It's just not clear if the trauma caused the introversion or if the introversion is causing how they are processing the trauma. These things can coexist. And so there's no conclusive evidence for that either. A lot of the things, and this is something that I found really fascinating as I began doing research, as much as we talk about introversion as something definitive, even the researchers don't know. They don't know
But again, they're
how
looking
someone
for
is more
things.
introverted or not, like why they are more of an internal processor or an external processor. What exactly is introversion? The scientists can't even agree on that, which is,
Wow. Does
you
it
would think
matter?
that we
I mean,
would
come
have,
on.
you would think
Does
we would
it
have had this
matter?
figured out. Does
Yeah.
it's still not
Everybody's
definitive.
unique. Everybody's unique, and they have their, like you say, there is a sliding scale. So there
Yeah.
isn't all this.
Yeah.
That's what I don't know. I worry about all these things because you just think, look, if ever, even in introvert, there's a scale, extroverts, there's a scale. That means where everybody's just different. Everybody's just
Yeah.
their uniqueness and has their unique way. Some people are internal, and
Yeah.
nobody's better or worse than the other. We're all just getting
Well,
through
I mean,
with the
ultimately,
skill
we're all
sets
trying to
we've
figure
got.
it out. We're all trying to get through the day like alive and reasonably happy. Like we're all
Yeah,
trying to that's the aim for like everyone, regardless
yeah.
which gradient that you are. And that's important to recognize as well, that it's exactly true. There is not a definitive like this is the one. Like you need to be this one out of the millions of gradients of gray. This particular one is the pixel that you need to be. There's nothing like
Be
that.
you.
There's nothing like
Just
that.
be your perfectly imperfect you. Just be you.
Right.
Be
And
you
what
and
we
have the confidence.
And I just wanted to go back to what we were talking about the research for just a quick moment, because one of the things that has been consistent with the research is how the effects of introverts playing the extrovert game, how that affects them. That has been found repeatedly to be a detrimental effect. The extent of that detriment varies. So whether that is, a lot of times it comes down to mental health and wellness. So even for those introverts who across gender, across race, they are trying to force themselves to get out of their shell, to be more social, to do all of these things without having that time and that space to recalibrate and re-energize. It may look on the surface that they're doing well, but actually it's throwing off their hormones. It's causing brain fog. It's causing just a lower quality of life where they have a lower self image. They have less engagement overall. It shows up as severe health consequences down the line. They burn out their integrants. And there are all sorts of things that have found that when you are an introvert trying to force yourself to be an extrovert, it harms you greatly in a variety of ways. So that it's interesting. That's what the research has been consistent on, not
That
on so
makes a
many
lot of
other
sense.
things.
That makes a lot of sense
Yeah.
because you're putting too much stress. So you're having too much cortisol in the body because you're stressing, because that's not you, because you're not being you. So actually that research makes 100%
it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So back off. I had to. With my dog, back off. Leave them be. They'll do they'll do a much better job. I pulled her from school. I got her a tutor because she went to a new school throughout COVID when they went back, and he kept putting her on the spot and making her feel bad. I was like, no, this isn't good for you. No, I'm pulling it. And I pulled her and I thought, introvert, you'll actually work better, do better working with a tutor. Probably wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for lockdown, but it was really bothering me. Leave her alone. She knows her stuff. She's a bright kid, but don't put her on the spot in front of everybody, because it's not fair. For anybody if they're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or social media, they'll have all your details below. But if anybody's just listening and they're like, I would like to have a talk with Jacqueline, so how would they get in touch with you?
The best place is to go to iembraceawesome.com. That is my online home base, iembraceawesome.com, where you can find out what I'm doing. There are resources for introverts. You can get some insight. And of course, you can contact me through there to have a conversation. I am an introvert who does enjoy those one-on-one conversations. So I am one who does enjoy that. And I love connecting with people. So iembraceawesome.com is the best place to get in contact.
Fantastic. And so how do you help your clients? What is it that you do? How do you take them from introvert to influential?
The short answer is, when I'm working with clients one-on-one, we can first have the assessment for what exactly are you trying to accomplish and who are you? And that's just a lot of work of clearing out the debris and the stories that you've told and sold yourself. Once we've cleared off all of that, now we can put a strategy in place. This is what you're wanting to accomplish and how. And I'm right there with you to set those milestones so that you are accomplishing those goals. You have accountability for doing it. You got to do what you said you wanted to do. And I will make sure that you are doing that. And then to celebrate those wins as you are coming out and you are impacting and influencing in the way that makes sense for you. And for organizations that are looking to bring me in and that I've gone to, it's helping those employees and those executives for sure to similarly clear the debris of what a leader looks like and who can be in leadership, and reaffirm and recalibrate how leadership can then be executed by leaning into the introverts and leveraging their wisdom, their authority, and their expertise.
Fantastic. So if you need help, get in touch with Jacqueline. Now, if you would also, it said in your bio that you're an author too. So would you like to share about your books?
Absolutely. You can definitely find them on Amazon. But one of my books is Yes, Introverts Can. And this is a look at some of those introverts that we talked about before, so like Beyonce, Viola Davis, Naomi Osaka. These are all introverts who are doing big things in the world. We look at what they're doing, how they are leveraging their introversion, and what are the ways that you can then put that into action for yourself.
Awesome. So there you go. And so you get them on Amazon, or they can get it from the website too?
Correct.
Awesome.
On both.
Fantastic. Look, it's been fantastic chatting to you. And because I've had personal experience with all this. And like I said, it's understanding it. Man, life's so much easier for both parties. So, which just makes sense that companies need to have an understanding of this, because you're going to have a much happier workforce if everybody understands each other a little bit better. And so, yes, the awareness around it just does need to be a lot more. So thank you for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to the rest of the listeners, well, hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I will be back next week on Tuesday with a Coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
The Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical, and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.